Hello and welcome to our channel. We're going to tell you a story. Sometimes love doesn't come from far away, it can be waiting right next door. This is the story of Lena, a woman who moved into a new apartment, only to discover that her loud, reckless neighbor would one day become her greatest love. This is My Name is Lena. Life has always surprised me in strange ways, and sometimes, it surprised me with people. I never thought that moving into a new apartment would change the entire course of my life. I thought it would just be another place, another address, another step in my journey. But I was wrong. The day I carried my suitcases into that tall gray building, I felt both nervous and excited. Nervous because everything was unfamiliar, new walls, new faces, new routines. Excited because it felt like a fresh beginning, a chance to build myself up again. I had gone through heartbreak before, and all I wanted was peace, maybe a little bit of happiness. I never thought love would find me again, especially not right next door. My new neighbor's name was Adrian. I didn't know much about him at first, except that his apartment was right beside mine, and that he lived in a completely different world from mine. From the very first evening, I noticed something unusual. His apartment was never quiet. There was always laughter, music, and the sound of footsteps coming and going. And then there was him, Adrian. Adrian was the kind of man who caught people's attention without even trying. Tall, handsome, with a confidence that filled the hallway whenever he stepped out. But he wasn't the type you'd call polite or gentle. He was loud, carefree, and reckless in a way that made people both curious and cautious. And there was something else about him that everyone in the building seemed to know. He always had women visiting. Different women, almost every night. They would arrive laughing, sometimes dressed elegantly, sometimes casually, and they never stayed too long. At first, I told myself it wasn't my business. What he did in his apartment had nothing to do with me. Still, I couldn't ignore it completely. His laughter, his music, the constant knocking on his door, all of it reminded me that I had a neighbor who lived his life in a way completely opposite to mine. I was quiet, reserved, and cautious. He was bold, wild, and unpredictable. And yet, fate has a strange way of pushing two very different people together. The first encounter. It happened on my third day in the building. I was carrying a heavy box of books into my apartment when the box slipped from my hands. Books scattered all over the hallway. I knelt down quickly, embarrassed, trying to gather them. That's when I heard a deep chuckle above me. "Need some help, neighbor?" I looked up and saw Adrian standing there, leaning casually against his doorframe. He wore a black t-shirt, his hair slightly messy, a playful smirk on his face. Before I could even respond, he crouched down and began picking up my books. "You read a lot," he said, raising an eyebrow at the titles. "Romance novels? Drama? Interesting. Didn't expect that." I frowned slightly. "And what exactly did you expect?" He grinned. "Someone quiet like you? Maybe cookbooks or gardening tips?" I shook my head, half amused, half annoyed. "Well, you were wrong." For a moment, our eyes met. His were a sharp shade of green, full of mischief. Mine probably looked guarded. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing he'd already gotten under my skin. He handed me the last book and stood up. "I'm Adrian, by the way. Your neighbor." And now, officially, your book rescuer. Lena, I replied shortly. He smiled wider, as if he'd won a small game. Nice to meet you, Lena. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of each other. At that time, I had no idea how true those words would be. Worlds collide. Over the next few weeks, I learned more about Adrian, sometimes because he told me things directly, sometimes because I overheard conversations through the thin walls. He was a musician, though not a very successful one. He played the guitar, sang at small bars, and spent the rest of his time surrounded by friends who admired his carefree lifestyle. I often found him frustrating. His parties would go late into the night. His laughter echoed through the walls. Sometimes, I even knocked on his door, asking him to keep it down. But the strange thing was, he never got angry. Instead, he would smile, apologize casually, and the next day he would show up at my door with some excuse to talk. Once it was to borrow sugar, another time it was to ask if I had a spare pen, and another time it was simply because he accidentally cooked too much pasta and didn't want it to go to waste. I wasn't naive. I knew these were just excuses. But slowly, little by little, I found myself talking to him more than I expected. He was charming, but not in a perfect way. He teased, he laughed at his own jokes, and sometimes he said things that made me roll my eyes. But behind all of that, I began to notice something else. When he thought no one was watching, his expression would change. His smile would fade, his eyes would look distant, almost sad. And that made me curious. Who was the real Adrian? An unexpected night. One night, I came home from work later than usual. The hallway was quiet, which was unusual because Adrian's apartment was always full of noise. I didn't think much of it until I heard a faint sound from his door. It was music. Soft, slow guitar music. For some reason, I stopped and listened. The melody was beautiful, emotional, so different from the loud parties I had grown used to. Without realizing it, I stood there for several minutes, just listening. Then his door opened. Adrian stepped out, guitar still in his hands, surprised to see me standing there. Enjoying the show, neighbor? He asked with a grin, but this time his voice wasn't teasing. I blushed slightly. I didn't mean to listen. I was just passing by. He shrugged. It's fine. Not many people stop to listen, anyway. There was something in his tone that caught me off guard, a hint of vulnerability. That was beautiful, I said softly. You're really talented. For a moment, he just looked at me, as if trying to figure out whether I was serious. Then, for the first time since I met him, he gave me a genuine smile. Not a playful smirk, not a mischievous grin. Just a simple, heartfelt smile. Thanks, Lena, he said quietly. That night was different. It was the first time I saw the other side of Adrian, the side he didn't show to the world. The shift. From that night on, things began to change between us. We started talking more, not just in the hallway but in each other's apartments. He told me about his struggles as a musician, how he had big dreams but often felt like he was failing. I told him about my past, about the heartbreak that made me afraid to trust again. Somehow, in sharing our flaws, we found comfort in each other. But it wasn't easy. There were days when I doubted him. Days when I wondered if he was still seeing other women. Days when I questioned if I was just another name on his long list. Yet, despite my fears, I couldn't deny what was happening. Against all odds, I was falling for my neighbor. And deep down, I knew, he was falling for me too. Falling for Adrian was like standing at the edge of a cliff. I knew it was dangerous, I knew the fall could hurt, but there was something about the way he looked at me, the way he smiled when it was just the two of us, that made me want to take the risk. Still, old fears are hard to let go of. My heart had been broken before, and every time Adrian's phone buzzed late at night, every time I saw another woman smile at him when we walked down the street, a knot of insecurity tightened inside me. One evening, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Adrian," I said quietly, while we sat on my balcony, sipping tea. "Why me? You could be with anyone. You've had plenty of women in your life. Why are you spending your time with me?" He put his cup down slowly and turned to face me. There was no teasing in his eyes this time, no playful smirk on his lips. "Because you're different, Lena," he said softly. "Those other women, they were distractions. Fun for a night, maybe two. But you're the first person who ever listened to me. The first who saw me, not just the mask I put on for the world. With you, I don't have to pretend." My chest tightened. I wanted to believe him, but my fear whispered, what if he's lying? What if you're just another distraction? I looked down, unsure what to say. That's when he reached across the table and gently took my hand. "Look at me, Lena," he said firmly. I raised my eyes to his. His grip was warm, steady. "I've done a lot of stupid things in my life. I've wasted time, I've hurt people, I've made mistakes. But I swear to you, us, it's the only thing that feels real. Don't push me away because of who I used to be." And in that moment, something inside me shifted. For the first time, I decided to trust him. From then on, we were inseparable. Adrian changed in ways that surprised even me. The late-night parties stopped. The endless stream of women visiting his apartment disappeared. Instead, there were quiet evenings of music, dinners we cooked together, long walks under the city lights. The building residents noticed too. Some were shocked. Others whispered that it wouldn't last. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, I was happy. Adrian also pushed me to step out of my comfort zone. He encouraged me to chase the dreams I had once buried, writing, painting, and even traveling. And in return, I supported him in his music, attending every performance, cheering him on even when the audience was small. It wasn't perfect. We argued sometimes, over silly things, over fears that resurfaced, over the fact that we were so different. But every fight ended with an apology, a hug, and the reminder that love was worth the struggle. The night that changed everything. One rainy night, months after we first met, Adrian came home drenched, carrying his guitar. I had been waiting up for him, worried because his gig had run late. He looked tired, defeated, like the world had finally worn him down. "Rough night?" I asked gently, handing him a towel. He nodded, sitting heavily on the couch. "The bar owner said I wasn't good enough. Said people come for drinks, not for music. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm wasting my time." I sat beside him, placing a hand on his arm. "Adrian, you have a gift. Don't let one person's words destroy your dream. He looked at me then, eyes full of frustration and doubt. You really believe in me, don't you? More than you believe in yourself, I whispered. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, to my surprise, he pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. His hands trembled as he opened it, revealing a simple silver ring. I don't have fame, I don't have money, and I don't even know if my music will ever take me anywhere. But I have you, Lena. And that's enough. Will you marry me? Tears filled my eyes. My heart raced. All the doubts, all the fears melted away in that single instant. Yes, I breathed, my voice shaking. Yes, Adrian. I'll marry you. And just like that, the man who was once my noisy, reckless neighbor became the man I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Our wedding. We didn't have a grand wedding. There were no castles, no expensive gowns, no massive crowds. Instead, we chose something simple, intimate, and true to us. I wore a white dress with lace sleeves. Adrian wore a navy blue suit, his hair neatly styled but still carrying that familiar touch of wildness. We stood in a small garden surrounded by close friends, exchanging vows we wrote ourselves. His words made me cry. I used to think love was just a game, he said, looking straight into my eyes. But then you came into my life, Lena, and you showed me it was real. You made me want to be a better man. And I promise, for the rest of my life, I'll keep trying every single day to deserve you. When the ceremony ended, and he kissed me, I knew I had made the right choice. My neighbor, the man I once thought was nothing but trouble, was now my husband, my partner, my love. Life after marriage. Married life wasn't always easy. Adrian and I were still two very different people, and our differences sometimes clashed. But that was also what made our love strong. He taught me how to live in the moment, how to laugh even when things went wrong. I taught him patience, responsibility, and the quiet beauty of stability. Together, we found balance. His music slowly began to gain recognition. With my encouragement, he started posting his songs online, and little by little, people began to notice. Soon, he was invited to play at bigger venues. I was always there, cheering him on, his biggest supporter. And every time he introduced me to the audience, he said the same thing: this song is for my wife, Lena, the woman who believed in me when no one else did. I couldn't have been prouder. Looking back now, as I sit in our cozy apartment, the same one where it all began, I sometimes think about how strange life can be. When I first moved in, I thought Adrian was just a loud, reckless neighbor I had to tolerate. I never imagined he would become my best friend, my soulmate, my husband. Our story isn't perfect. We fought, we struggled, we doubted. But through it all, we chose each other, again and again. And if someone asked me today if I regret marrying my neighbor, my answer would be simple. Not at all. Because sometimes, love doesn't come in the way you expect it. Sometimes it arrives next door, loud and messy, wrapped in flaws and mistakes. And if you're brave enough to open your heart, it might just turn into the greatest love story of your life. I hope you enjoyed this story. Have you ever experienced? Share your stories with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories and adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.